I can bring to you information from other franchises. I can help you connect with franchisees that might be valuable for you. If they had been coached and trained to do that, I would have had more success than I did. So looking back over the years, I was like, what is it that, what is it that I can bring to franchising? And it just got more and more clear that there's this gap in how we treat the people in the field, and how that's where the hidden profitability is. We're not putting enough attention on the importance of this role that is ultimately responsible for franchisee performance and profitability, which I think we can all agree is the number one driver of franchise company growth, right? If franchisees are profitable and engaged and happy, we're going to sell more franchises. And then of course we're going to get that operational leverage because they're making more money and we're going to make more royalties. So that is where this all comes from. And I just wanted to give you guys that human perspective, that human story. My rant is done. Maybe.
That's a great rant. I love it. I do love it. And I want to reference back. So I think that's an amazing story because you definitely, you grew up in the field and definitely earned your chops there and faced some intriguing life situations. And I think what we had also referred to earlier was as it relates to growth. I mean, sometimes our franchisees, and we find that in our system, our franchisees are really looking to grow ahead of where they are today. And they're just like, oh, I want more territory. I want more territory. But Carly had a great point. If you haven't finished developing the territory that you're in yet, how do we allow you to grow? So it's kind of encouraging the growth and at the same time making sure that they're conforming to be ready to take that next step.
Yeah,
I'm
and I
going to
think
give a minute.
I
Oh,
was just
go
going to
ahead.
say, Carly, I wanted to point out too, this is really important, that the reason that I recommended we bring Carly on this session is because Tutor Doctor. So we've had AC Inc. We've had the opportunity to really see, like, lift the hood inside a lot of different brands through the clients we work with, and of course through our weekly roundtables. And so we've been able to see in the past, because we started the roundtables in March of 2020. So it's been over 3 years of us being able to see different ways people are doing things. And Tutor Doctor is one of the top companies in terms of how they are supporting their franchisees. So when Carly's talking, and when we were talking in advance of this, I said to her, you might not realize that what you guys are doing is like above average. Like you guys, you need to pave the way for other franchisors to see. So I just wanted to point out that when she's talking, really listen to what they're doing. They're really investing in franchisee success, performance. They're investing in field coach development. And I've learned a lot from Tutor Doctor. So that's why it's so important that she's here.
Thank you so much, Angela. I also want to add maybe a human element as well to my experience to give context as well. And we can go any direction from there. But when I started with Tutor Doctor about 5 years ago, my role was at the time was what was called a launch support specialist. So I was paired with brand new franchisees who were launching their business, and I was traveling between Canada, the US, and the UK every other week to the new business locations that we're launching and spending a week with them in the field, launching their business, really just showing them how to do those activities in the community necessary to build critical mass quickly, with the goal of course, being profitable over time from that initial success in the business. And many tones of what Angela shared in terms of, like, if you just look at my photo or if you know me, I am young, and I definitely started young with Tutor Doctor and showing up to these business owners in the field, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, definitely threw them off, I think, initially, but my commitment to really driving their performance and showing them what it takes to be successful in the field really helped to build the trust. And we think of trust in three kind of core pillars: competence, character, and common sense of purpose. And I think initially it was challenging for me to build the competence pillar of the trust triangle, in the sense of just based on how young I was. But really partnering, listening to franchisees, being a partner in their success really goes a long way. And my time with them in the field was definitely a way that I could demonstrate that service and partnership with them. And what I would also add is that was part of how we supported franchisees initially, as we flew out and really helped them launch their business in the community in those initial stages. And that was some of the best success that we'd seen with our new franchisees. And that was about 2017, 2018, 2019, until the pandemic hit and we were no longer doing those field visits and those that in-field activity to support our franchisees with their business launch. And that's really shifted the way that we support our new franchisees. And if I'm being honest, we're still working out some of the kinks in the way that, we haven't been getting that in-field same experience with them in launching their business. But we've also at the same time been able to be creative with how we're supporting them virtually and getting them out in the field and coming back to share their learnings with their peer groups. So we're still working out what that perfect balance is post-COVID of in-field training and also leveraging the advantages of virtual. But all that to say, definitely have lots of experience working shoulder to shoulder with franchisees, building that trust. And now with more of a role of overseeing the business coach team at Tutor Doctor, I work really closely with equipping the coaches with those skills necessary to not only drive franchisee performance in the early stages, but really driving their performance beyond. And a lot of those decision-making processes around what we're talking about today with unlocking hidden profitability does really come after that initial stage. And it's a really important topic that we're discussing today. And I'm just open to taking any direction. But I just wanted to give a little context there.
That's amazing. I'm just listening to you as in total awe of how young you were and going to all these countries and opening these franchises, and it just, kudos to you, Carly. And Julie, you unmiked. I want to give everybody a chance to jump in. Go ahead and ask your question. I know there are people here who have lots of questions for both you, Carly, and Angela. Julie?
Julie Burleson?
Yes, well, you were unmiked, so I thought
Oh
you wanted to
no, I'm
say
so
something that
sorry. I have a lot to
that's
say, but
okay.
I'll hold my questions for a little bit. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. So, is there anyone who would like to jump in with a question or comment at this time? I did want to highlight something that Techie says this. As a franchisor, we did Clubhouse Monday through Friday for all our franchisees to join. So that's kind of interesting. Get everybody on the Clubhouse app to participate and do some sharing. And I guess I'd like to understand and maybe dig in a little bit on something you mentioned, Carly. And Angela, I know you're very familiar with. Tell us a little bit about peer groups and how you see those operating within the franchise system to drive accountability and help franchisees understand where they are relative to others and how they can scale and grow.
I'd love to get Angela's perspective on this as well. This is something we're currently exploring in Tutor Doctor at the moment. We've had in the past, in 2018 and 2019, we led a Going for Growth, which was essentially a peer for performance group. It was fantastic for a lot of reasons, but it also fizzled out for a lot of reasons. But as we've come out of the pandemic, we've really seen opportunity to better leverage structured peer performance groups with financial visibility and all the core elements of what makes peer groups successful, especially as I'm sure many of you can understand, field coaching and field support, we are limited on resources, and we want to do as much as we can to serve as many franchisees as we can towards their goals. And there's many ways we can support franchisees, and primarily in the Tutor Doctor model, the way we support franchisees is one-to-one, what we call coaching, active coaching. And the franchisee works one-to-one with a coach every 2 weeks for half an hour. There's flexibility for more or less time where needed, but we do a lot of one-to-one heavy coaching, which does have limitations on field coach resources. And so we're really looking to find that balance between, we know, so for context, our one-to-one coaching last year, any franchisee who was working with a coach had a 23% revenue increase versus franchisees who were not working with a coach. So we know that our one-to-one
Wow.
coaching
Because that is an incredibly impressive number. 23% growth if they were working with a coach.
yes, versus,
Wow.
and our coaching program is opt-in, which also may be different from many of your franchise systems. So we do a lot of work to try and encourage franchisees to sign up for a coach, but it is an opt-in program, which has its strengths and limitations. But we do know that our one-to-one coaching does drive revenue growth for those who are engaged in working with a coach. But we also know we haven't tapped into the ability of peer groups to drive group performance. And imagine if we could do more with less, which is of course always the dream for all of us. But I do think that there is a balance, and we're still working to strike that. But I love Angela's or anyone else's input on that as well from their experience.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. I'm so glad you brought up that stat. There's so many different things I want to say about this. One of them is that I love that you brought up the resources. This is the most probably common objection people have, and I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how do you offer that proactive growth coaching, and how do you do all this work with, the field coaches and everything? And I think it's important for everybody to really hear what Carly just said, that it's opt-in. And so, because if you're trying to, unlock this hidden profitability through, best practice field coaching, that's going to ultimately help franchisees be more profitable, they have to want it. So that's one of the ways to manage the resource challenge, is that you're not offering this proactive, intense, you're offering it, but in most cases, what we see is, 30 to 50% are taking the franchisor up on it. But yes, performance groups are a great way to also manage the resources. We have seen and helped brands with a bunch of different ways of doing it. From what I'm seeing with brands, there's less people are doing the really intense version of a mastermind performance group where everybody flies to one of the franchisees' hometowns, and they really focus on that franchise, open the books and go deep for 2 days, and then next quarter to another franchisee. We're seeing less of that. We're seeing more casual format masterminds or performance groups where the franchisees come together with a facilitator from the home office, and they work through challenges, in like a 90-minute session, maybe once or twice a month. But one thing I wanted to share that we've been getting some amazing success with is, it's sort of a hybrid of what we're talking about. And it actually, I have to say, I attribute Jen Brandon on my team, who is a former Tutor Doctor franchisee. As a franchisee, she was a top performer, multi-unit, like 7-territory franchisee, and was one of the franchisees who was sent around to coach so peer-to-peer coaching. So there's also that. We can talk about that a little bit later. But she created this performance group coaching program. And what it is bringing together 4 to 6 franchisees with, and in this case, we are the coach. We do a fractional offer, but you can also do this in your own system. So have somebody facilitating 4 to 6 franchisees. And it starts with, there's 3 phases. One is, where are you at right now? Like, what are your KPIs? Do you even know? Do you understand them? Do we need to teach you that? Second phase is, where are you trying to get to? And then the third phase is, okay, what do we need to do to get you there? What are the action steps, like the lead indicators that we need to set up that we're going to track to make sure that you get there? And with this program, we're teaching business skills at the beginning of each session. So whether that's like learning your KPIs or understanding your profit and loss, or productivity is a common franchisee challenge, or leadership skills. And so by the end of it, they're like, okay, I'm off and ready to go. And what we love about this is it's a great way to, again, like maximize kind of resources, like having them come together. Again, they have to want it. It won't work if they're not bought in and accountable. And we're seeing 25% increase in those franchisees that have been in those performance groups. So similar to what Carly's saying, if the franchisees want it and they're willing to show up, if you could, this is the unlocking of the hidden profitability by giving them the proper, proper coaching and training that they need to do it. So those are some things I wanted to just share about performance groups. I don't know if that answers or if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it is a good time. We're right at the half hour mark. So I'm just going to quickly reset the room. It's 12:30. This is Women in Franchising on Clubhouse. My name is Robin Gagnon. I'm here every single week to host this opportunity at 12 noon for us to share franchising best practices, growth, ways in which you can build your business practice up. And today is a phenomenal discussion because we're talking about unlocking the hidden profitability in your franchise system through field coaching and providing franchisee support, what that looks like today and how you can develop it to increase shareholder value. We're so fortunate to have Angela Coté from her team, the AC team, which does so much work in this space, and then Carly Arnott, who's a performance excellence manager at Tutor Doctor. Katrina, I want to make sure you and Danessa have a chance to weigh in. See if you want to raise any questions for the group or want to ask a question of your own from your perspective, or if anyone else wants to flash their mic and jump in with a question. We've been talking about these peer groups, these numbers in the peer groups where coaching is there, 23, 25% growth. I mean, there are leadership teams that would give anything to be in just early double digit growth, and to see that this is something that tangible, they could put their finger on and get the pulse of something that would give them 23% growth by door is phenomenal. Diane, jump in. I'd love to hear your
Do you
question.
mind if this is Diane, and my question, this is a question for both, and Angela's going to smirk a little because she and I have talked about these kind of things in the past. But my question is, we don't seem to, as an industry, to be able to be consistent with what we call the position that is coaching these franchisees. They seem to be a multitude of things they're called. And I would love to hear your thoughts on from a standpoint of like, if we talk about a CEO, we know what that is. A president, we know what that is. But we don't have a variety of names for people that do coaching of our franchisees. I'd love to hear some recommendations on that. And secondly, where is the sweet spot of the number of franchisees any one coach can manage? I've heard everywhere from 15 to 50. Any thoughts? Thank you.
Wow, those are killer questions. I love both of them, and I'd love anyone to sound off because I hear franchise field consultant, franchise business consultant, franchise coach. Carly, Angela, jump in and tell us about those titles. And then, yes, this sort of span of influence or span of control is a great question.
Okay, I'll start here just because okay, I'll just jump in. So the title, so Diane, yes, I'm smirking. You can't see it, but you can probably hear it. So what we believe at AC Inc. is that different brands may need their own title based on the culture of the brand. And first of all, I'll say that as a franchisee, when the person that was in the field was called an area manager, I personally struggled with that because, well, I didn't struggle with it. It turned me off because I'm like, I'm not managed. I don't work for them. That sounds like they're my manager. Now, what it really means is they're the manager of the area. But to me, that word manager as my direct coach or consultant was not motivating. So I think it has to resonate. And I think like a brand where the franchisees are maybe more like in the trades or I don't know how to exactly word that, but maybe men, and they might not like the word coach. They might be turned off by the word coach and feel that that's condescending. So I think that it may have a little bit to do with the brand itself and the culture of the brand. But we use the term field coach at AC Inc. because we think that it's just nice and generic across the board for the industry. We don't mean it necessarily from the perspective of the franchisee versus we don't mean it for what the franchisee is hearing necessarily. So I'll answer the other question after Carly talks about this, about the ratio. But Carly, I would love for you to explain the business coach name that you guys use and why, because it's pretty cool.
Yes, and great question, Angela. I don't know if I'm the best person to speak to why it was made because I wasn't involved in the decision making. But my understanding is that because our program is heavily opt-in, the word business coach just added a value from the FD process and also just the ops side as well, just in the sense of you are getting your own personal business coach to support you and your business and your growth goals. And so that's the word that we've chosen, but I definitely agree with the sentiments expressed around the confusion in the industry with all the different names for field coaches. But it essentially is our role is a field coach and field support. But the capacity of our coaches, as I mentioned before, is heavily one-to-one based. So I'll just quickly speak to the sweet spot, at least with how we coach with our one-to-one framework. And I also just want to call out that the way we coach at Tutor Doctor is really, we take a more proactive approach with our coaching, in the sense that the way we support the franchisee is proactive, and there is resource implications to that in terms of how much time we spend with the franchisee. So I just want to call that out because every system is different. But our sweet spot at the moment for our coaches is around the 30 franchisee mark. And that allows them to meet with each of their franchisees once every 2 weeks. So if you work that backwards, it's about 30 hours in a 2-week period. And so there's about 50 hours left. And our coaching team works very collaboratively on other field support initiatives. So for example, our coaching team collaborates to put on boot camps for our franchisees on specific development topics based on the seasonality of our business or based on, annual priorities. We have a boot camp calendar for the year. We all collaborate to put the boot camps on. We also have weekly global calls. So each of our coaches take turns rotating, presenting a development topic that week. We also have our coaches lead regional meetings as well as any other collaboration calls. So our team is heavily supported in wider network field support in addition to those one-to-one calls. And we purposely don't give them more than, so I understand why a lot of systems can, like I could see the 50 franchisee capacity makes sense as well. We've just chosen to cap it around the 30 mark so that the coach does have flexibility to work on some of those other field support items. But I'll hand it over to anyone else who has questions or comments.
Did you want? I'll just kind of add on to that as well. Then, so what we see just such a range, and it's kind of $1 million question because it depends on the brand. It depends on sometimes certain brands might be more intense in terms of training requirements. Like there's some things that are more simple to run than others. So there's just a lot of variables. Is it brick and mortar? Is it a restaurant, quick service? You have to go out and see them in the field, more like literally in the field. Like when we say field coaching, we are often talking about Zoom calls. So there's just a lot of different variables. I'd say probably if I had to say an average, I would say it's about 1 to 30, and even going back a number of years, hasn't really changed. But I would argue that we also want to be careful that we don't just look at what the industry averages, because again, I'm being a little bold when I say this, but I don't believe that. I believe that a lot of franchisors are missing on this hidden profitability, and if they're not quite sure how do I invest in this when I don't know if it's going to be profitable for me. We have our field coach roundtable, and these field coaches are there, and you can tell that they're overworked, and they're stuck working on a lot of reactive hotline support, and they would love to be they're just an incredible group of people. They would love to be able to be proactively coaching the franchisees, but the resources aren't being allocated to them. So I would argue that any franchisor that's listening should think about okay, if we can implement this growth coaching, this proactive coaching, and say 30% of our franchisees take us up on it, and those franchisees are likely going to be up, even if it's 20% growth, like on revenue. How does that impact your royalties? Maybe you can afford it and you just have to kind of do the math a little bit. And that's the mission we're on, is to try to help people understand how important that role is. So if it requires the ratio to be 1 to 20, and you know, but you can get the profitability up and the revenue up, so the royalties are up, then why are we looking at industry norms? That's my thoughts.
Yeah, great feedback. I think, Courtney, jump in. I'd love to hear your question.
Hi. Well, I'm Courtney Allison with Spavia, and I have to say, Angela was absolutely reading my mind, because I think the big shift that has to happen in franchise brands is to move from that reactive firefighting, question answering type of coaching to actually proactive business coaching on how to increase profitability. It really starts with, what are the resources that you have in place? And everyone's probably sick of me talking about training at this point, but it truly does start with, what is that initial training for your franchisees? How are you training them on your systems, your tools, your processes, so they either have the information ready to go in their brains, or they know where to go to quickly find the answer, versus picking up the phone or shooting an email or a text to their FBC, because that feels like the easiest and fastest. That's really, and I've seen that in every brand I've worked with. It's that key to getting those systems in place so you can move your FBCs to that more proactive business coaching. Otherwise, they just spend their entire days, playing whack-a-mole or firefighting with the 10,000 questions that might be coming in from franchisees.
I think that description of whack-a-mole is spot on. And I think also what happens is you burn out and burn up your energy of these franchise business consultants or coaches, because they're consistently focused on the lowest tier performers, those who are, you're trying to coach up and get to the next level, who maybe should just be retrained entirely, because there's, taking so many resources from the company. Great, great feedback. Angela, Charlie, thoughts?
Carly, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I just want to add a comment. I think those are great comments, Courtney, and I couldn't agree more with the ability for the coaches to be equipped with all the resources at their fingertips to be proactive. And there's almost an element of, teaching the franchisee, teaching the franchisee to fish. Like they need to know where to go for the answers, and there is an element of that, especially in the early stages. And I just want to share, actually, because I'd be interested to see if there's any other brands that have dealt with this also and how they've gone about it. But we were primarily an in-home tutoring model pre-pandemic, and we overnight had to flip our model to online tutoring primarily. And so there was a lot of innovation and change that happened as a result of that, which I believe, came out even stronger as a brand on the other side. But as a field coaching team, we worked so hard and tirelessly to create so many resources for our franchisees during that time to support them with the transition. And naturally, things got disorganized a little bit. We almost have too many resources in too many places at the moment. And we're coming out the other side and really needing to reevaluate our entire resource bank to eliminate what no longer serves the next generation of tutor doctor, if that makes sense, but almost reteach and unlearn some things, just based on how we've had to navigate those shifts. And so we almost are in a position now where we have too many resources, and we're looking at how to really spend some time refining and pulling back on some things and reorganizing. So I don't know if there's anyone else who's gone through a similar transition, but it does, again, take resources to do that, and we're just, we're working through that as well as a field team. So yes, just throwing that out there.
And
Hey, guys, this is Megan. Carly, I just wanted to congratulate you on doing the hard work of going through a year, right, with folks to have that statistic. A lot of people give up before there's any real proof of concept. So I know what you've been through. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think that too many resources just really triggered me in a good way. Is franchisees often don't know which resource to use in some cases, and if there's too many logins. And I think, there's that shift right now of, like, the old keep it simple stupid. I think that we're all stupid if we think that everybody's going to know intuitively what is going to work for them. And so the coaching program tied up with better resources that work for, a larger percentage of people, I think that's really smart of you guys to take a hard look at that. Good job.
I'm just going to add something here that we hear all the time. So when we talk to people and they're like, we're trying to support our franchisees and we want them to be profitable, like they're truly trying. And we say, okay, well, tell us what does your support look like right now? And they're like, we do everything. We give them all the tools and resources they need. We have an awesome LMS, like we have an awesome learning management system. We have, we provide them the marketing materials. We do everything. And we're like, okay, so that's great. But the biggest challenge is, for some reason, and I think it's what Megan just said, like, and Carly, like, they get overwhelmed and don't know what's out there. Where is it? What even is the resource I need to solve this problem? And so that's why there will always be a need for the human element. And that's where the coaching comes in. And I think Carly mentioned this as well, but like teaching them to fish, right? Like, okay, you come into me with a question, like, let's teach you where that is so that you get more independent with those resources and I can help you more with growing your business and the things that you need to do. So this is a very, very common thing that we see, is like, we have all these resources and they don't use them, and franchisors get frustrated, and it's like, you just have to accept it. They still are going to need the coaching and the guidance.
Well, yeah, Angela, and that's exactly what I was meaning, is that they will say with a healthy amount of either optimism or pessimism that there's too much, So it's just like you can't make everybody happy, but I think importantly, it is, well, I don't know, so and so said this one thing didn't work, right? There's a lot of hearsay, there's a lot of that, and unfortunately, we'll just never be able to be replaced. But I don't think that's unfortunate. I think that's really the human condition. I think it's really important to make those connections.
yeah, so we've had learning management systems out there for quite a while. I'm actually playing around with artificial intelligence to provide a character-based little I don't know. It's a little character. We call it the knife and fork assistant, who is able to answer so many questions for our franchisees, and we're rolling that out as an entire app for our brand, where they literally just speak into it and say, "How do I do this or that?" or "How do I defend commission?" or "How do I register on the website?" And the artificial intelligence is actually delivering the result. So I think there's actually going to be a huge leap forward in terms of being able to deliver different forms of content, and the immediacy of being able to deliver that to franchisees. Because I was joking with one of my franchise business consultants and saying, literally, this is like, having Rob in your pocket, because it's just, it's right there on the phone. So just another idea to throw out there, and more stuff going on in the chat. Where people are asking about LMS platforms. What haven't we talked about that we should have talked about so far yet? I guess.
We should talk about where to find. Everybody always asks us, okay, so I get it. I want to prove who's in the field, or put the proper field coaching in place. How do I find them? So Robin, I'll go there, I guess, if that's okay. Actually, I see Julie just unmiked.
Julie, did you mean to unmic?
Did
Did
you
you
have a
have a
question?
question? Uh-oh, Julie, we can't hear you. You're going to have to come back in a little bit with your question. Angela, go ahead and talk to us about where we find, where you were going with your discussion, and maybe Julie will get in a better.
Yeah, and I'm sure Carly can chime in on this as well. I just wanted to, because everybody asks us, yeah, where do we find field coaches? And another question is, can we use franchisees? And we actually talked about using franchisees as field coaches on this Clubhouse. And I think Julie was the one that asked the question about maybe, I'm going to say 6 or 8 months ago or something. So we can talk about that as well. But the thing that I think is really important for people to wrap their head around is that you need to know the right DNA for a person to be successful in that coaching role, and the right skills, and just the overall. I look at it as there's sort of 3 areas I like to make sure that we check if we're going to hire somebody to be a field coach. One is, do they love the brand? Do they have passion for the brand? Maybe they don't fully understand it, but they're really bought in. Number 2 is, do they have any business skills, like business acumen, business skills, business experience? And number 3 is the coaching piece. Have they ever been a coach of some sort, or do they at least have some strong leadership skills, soft skills, and we need to assess that. I'm not saying that the person has to have all those 3 when they come in as in this role, but you do need to make an assessment on what's missing, and can you train them up on the things that are missing. And what we often see franchisors do is gravitate, and I think we talked about this actually, and I feel like more recently on Clubhouse as well, but often gravitate towards somebody that's already in franchising and assume that that person is going to be a good field coach just because they've maybe been in the field in a different role, a different system. But again, if we look at the industry standards for what is happening in the field, I'm telling you, the more people we talk to, they say, we are not doing a good job. We are just doing compliance, compliance work in the field. So you have to really be careful. You don't overlook. The really important thing is, do they have those 3 things? Do they have like passion for the brand, some sort of business skills that you can at least maybe coach them up on, and then the coaching and leadership and soft skills element. And I would argue the third one is the most important. So I just wanted to touch on that. Now, I know, Carly, you have, I believe, had some success with people that have been in the field coming in. Maybe that's because they were good coaches. Maybe you can speak to that point as well.
I would definitely double click just in my experience with hiring coaches and seeing which ones end up being successful and which ones do not. Definitely double click on your kind of 3 keys to success in terms of passion of the brand, business acumen, and leadership coaching skills in some capacity. I would say that this could be recency bias, but we've seen challenges with bringing on coaches without the business acumen. I think they're so and it could also be a self-reflection on us not having great processes in place to skill up a coach coming to us with no business acumen. But in my experience, that tends to be a very challenging area if they do not show the ability to be able to skill up quickly in that area. And I think because there is a natural problem solving and a creative problem solving that funnels out of that business acumen piece, being able to look at a franchisee's business top to bottom, profit and loss, top line, bottom line, and understanding all the levers within that to be able to come up with a creative solution. Like, there is an element of, like, if you just don't have that, it becomes really challenging to really improve a franchisee's health and profitability. And so, yeah, I just want to double click on those 3 elements being core. And most recently, we've seen and put a importance on having a business acumen or being able to demonstrate at least the basics on that ability. That's been important to us over the last 6 months.
I hope it's okay. I was just going to share one thing here, Robin. Sorry.
No, I was just going to comment quickly that I thought what you said a moment ago was so important, because there is definitely a distinction between coaching and compliance. And Carly's talking about, getting people to scale up to the next level. I think when they're less skilled, they lean into compliance because that's simpler instead of the coaching. And that was the only point I was going to make. Jump in there.
Oh, you're so right, Robin. That's what I experienced as a franchisee, that when somebody was new in the role, and they came in, they would just get authoritative with us and go to compliance, and that's why it just rubbed us the wrong way. So that's a great point. I was just going to say that, so yeah, this is a gap that, franchise field coaches need this business skills training. And I think I actually learned this from Tutor Doctor, now that I think about it, that, they put a lot of emphasis on the development that the field coaches are getting. And that's like through leadership courses and things. And I'm not exactly sure, Carly maybe can speak to that, but this is why we have created a curriculum. Our team has created a curriculum that is actually going to be part of the IFA program and CFE accredited for coaches. So people can get the business skills training. How do you teach a friend? So like, we're not talking about just teaching how to look at a profit and loss statement. How do you teach a franchisee to look at a profit and loss statement? It's like coaching the coaches. So there's definitely a lot of need in the market, I think, for more opportunities for field coaches to get that development they need, whether it is business skills training, developing the leadership. One of the big challenges we see all the time is field coaches saying, I don't know what to do with the legacy franchisees or the high performing franchisees. How do I get them to like listen to me? How do I build credibility with them? Especially when these people are in these roles more junior and they don't have the development. They sort of freeze up and don't know what to do. So they need that support to try to break through. And we've seen some really cool breakthroughs with the field coaches that we've worked with, and how they get those legacy franchisees to pay attention. Carly, I don't know, maybe if you can speak to the development, some of your coaches, or that you use for your coaches.
Yes, and this is a bit of a can of worms I could go on for a long time about this topic, so I will try and hold myself back to be succinct. We have identified core skills that the coaches need to have in order to be successful with supporting their franchisees one-to-one. And two of those core skills is, one, the skill of coaching. So actually like skill transfer to the franchisee in a core area of their business. Primarily the sales levers and also the marketing activities. So like what it actually takes to transfer the skill, not just teaching, but the feedback loop incorporated in part of that, and the graduated learning of the franchisee. So we actually coach the coaches on how to coach the franchisee through that framework that actually transfers the skill to the franchisee. And we also have another framework that we coach the coaches on, which is called goal setting and review. So it's the methodology that we use with the franchisees we work with one-to-one. And that's the proactive support element that I was speaking to before, where if I were to simplify what it is, it's really it's a framework that allows both the franchisee and the coach to prep before the meeting. It allows them to focus the meeting on problem solving and KPI review and set goals for the next period. And then in the next 2 weeks, they come back, they do the same, they prepare, they review the goals, they set goals for the next period, and that's the essence of the framework. And so we coach the coaches on how to maximize that framework with the franchisees that they work with. And we actually score the coaches on how they're doing on coaching. There's so many, I've said coaching 8 times, but yeah, it's just, we really are intentional about where the coaches are falling on their skill development in those 2 core areas of their support with the franchisees. And I set development goals with the coaches. So for example, their score, the score is on a scale from 1 to 5. And so each coach is working on their development in a different area. And so, but at the end of the day, it's all in essence of supporting the franchisee as best as we can to make sure that the time that we're spending with them, they're actually transferring the skill to the franchisee so that the franchisee can fish in their own markets. The goal for us in our coaching program is we don't want to be coaching the franchisee forever. We want to teach them to self-regulate and be able to look at their business through the lens of all important metrics and be able to make decisions and set goals accordingly. So we're really using a framework to teach them how to do that. And we've had franchisees come through 12 months of our coaching program and say, you know what, I understand this framework and I feel ready to take it from here. Thank you so much for everything you've taught me. And I mean, that to us is very satisfying. It gives us the opportunity to work with their business to the next level. So all that to say, we do focus on the skill of coaching with the coaches and then also that goal setting and review methodology.
Sorry, I was looking for my own unmute button. That is great. And I would love to see that framework. I mean, I don't know if that's something you share outside your system, but that really is a great framework for beginning to coach those who coach. And we remind our franchisees frequently that, the number one, number two, number 10 athletes in the world in their given vocation still have coaches. They'll have a nutritional coach, they'll have a fitness coach, and then they have a team coach. So coaching is something that we want to make sure people are anxious to embrace. And with that, we are just all I can't believe the day has flown. We are right at the 1 o'clock mark. Just quick couple of announcements. One, I want to thank our amazing speakers, Angela and Carly. You guys shared so much today that I'm taking away, and I have a whole line of notes here. Upcoming events, I want to remind everyone of the Legal Symposium for IFA that's May 7th through 9th in DC, and the IBA IFA Joint Conference May 9 and 10. The WFN, the IFA WFN Regional Virtual Event, How to Master Your Executive Presence, is May 18th. And then the South Florida WFN FBN is doing Let's Talk Fran Tech. And then, of course, June 1 through 3, MFV International Franchise Expo. It's 1 o'clock straight up. I don't want to intrude on your day. We hope that we bring you value every single week as you attend this Clubhouse event and Women in Franchising. And again, to our guest speakers and all those who take an hour out of their week to share this moment with us, we appreciate you, and we're always looking for new topics to celebrate and consolidate information in the franchise industry. With that, I'll go ahead and count the room out, and you can look for updates on LinkedIn, and we'll close things out in 3, 2, 1.